you did record me, I try to make sure we have the date there, but if you haven't, doesn't matter.
Just started just now, so.
Just started? Okay, I start again. Then welcome everybody to another session of our weekly meeting at Global Technopolitics Forum at February 28, 2021. So let's start the meeting with Leo. Leo, would you like to talk about your work last week?
Yeah. So for the last week, I've been continuing on 5G research with ECHO. And based off of Professor Galina's comments, both on my report and ECHO's, we've been kind of taking another step back. And in addition to researching what makes 5G infrastructure, kind of explaining what a general actual mobile network looks like. So that's kind of what I've been doing this week, where I've just been looking at a lot of literature from the engineers themselves on how a cellular network works. And to be honest, I kind of went through open a can of worms to a lot of terms that are kind of confused, for my period, kind of confusing to understand. So I tried to make it as simple as possible, using diagrams as well to kind of illustrate how it looks. So Professor Godinez, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at my report, but I did put a lot of comments on the side, just kind of saying, does this make sense? Is there more detail needed? Is there less detail needed? And in addition to that, I also looked at ECHO's report, and she reached out to me saying that she had a call with you, Professor Godinez, about the Chile case and how that's probably for the next phase of our paper after we define 5G, how mostly developing countries or countries of low to middle income would go about sourcing 5G technology. But for me, I guess my next step is to see whether I've adequately defined how a general cellular network works, and then also how 5G comes into that.
I think you did a great job, but Maura?
I will confess to everyone right up front, I haven't read anything that anyone read this week so far yet because I'm off to a late start. But I do know that it's going to be a great way to back off. I actually was listening to a professor from Georgetown Emerging Technology doing a webinar on 5G. And what I found very interesting is the very first thing she did was to say, before I start talking, let me explain what this is. And so I think we all need to do that. And so I think what you're working on, Leo, is going to be perfect. I had a great meeting with ECHO, and I won't spend any more time on that, but I think you guys are really, we're back to the basics with the team, which is really good because then we'll be able to take advantage of all the more advanced research that we did. So I think you're in great shape, but I will look at it. Tomorrow is my day to read everything that you guys have done and get comments back. So that's all I have.
Leo, I saw a piece, the piece I saw, I think was ECHO's, was it? Where she talks about non-standalone and standalone, or was that your work?
Oh, that's ECHO's, yeah. So she was looking more at, kind of the next phase of how it would be deployed.
I see. Okay, I don't think I saw your piece. I'll catch up with it too then. Forgive me.
All right, no worries.
Okay, but I read it and I enjoyed it. I think you've done a very good job. I like the graphics you put there. It makes everything clear. So thank you. It is great work.
Definitely, yeah. I guess my worry is that I did try to break it down as simply as possible because our paper wouldn't be on the more advanced side of the technology. So I just want to get the right level of granularity, I guess.
Yeah. Paul, is Paul here?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Paul. Do you have any comment? Did you see the paper?
No, I'll look at it though and see what I think. I mean, using graphics like that, I think makes a lot of sense because sometimes it's difficult to imagine or visualize what this might be. That's probably a big help. But I'll take a look at it over the next day.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Daniel, would you like to talk about your work? Daniel Simon?
Yeah. So me and Kai this week, I think we got the paper pretty much finished, unless there's any additional comments. We resolved all the previous comments we had, and then Kai and I kind of split up the sections he did on regulation to make them a little bit more coherent. And then we also kind of went through and did a couple reviews, but I think at this point, what the biggest task for us is going to be finalizing all of our citations into like one singular format. And then also we need to review all of our citations. Definitely a big thing for, I think, for this paper to like, I don't know, gain traction, at least with like a cybersecurity professional, like someone who works on the technical side of things, is that the citations have to be almost perfect, because if it's like a news source or something that's not really a technical source, they start to like lose interest and not necessarily think it's as like expert as it could be, for lack of better words. So I think that's really our next big step. And then obviously if there's any additional comments, we will resolve those as well.
And is this a white paper or a proposal?
So I think last week we kind of discussed that there's like a securities grant proposal possibility, but it could also, I mean, I've had it, currently it's listed as a white paper in like my folder in the Google Drive.
Because
it's a white paper. It's a white paper.
It's a white paper.
It's a white paper that we will then turn into a proposal once I get a chance to review the recommendations piece, because I believe our strategy is going to be, Kai, why don't you to talk first about what you've done on the regulatory side, and then I can tell you where I think I am.
Yeah, so the main issue that I think comes up over and over in the regulatory side, which I think I addressed last week, is that the private sector has really just not been addressed in any meaningful way by any of the presidential administrations since Clinton. So that's probably where a lot of our recommendations would be focused, is providing more of a legitimate framework between, you know, government private sector partnerships for cybersecurity, which are still like very much in their infancy. So I think that's probably the biggest area we'd be focusing. And I think Dan covered perfectly like where we're at right now. And it's definitely a white paper, but yeah, we're pretty much good to go with the content for that section. We just need to finish up the citations, and then we can move on to.
Okay. I made a comment, then you can ignore my comments, because I wasn't sure whether it's a proposal or a white paper. Greg, any comments?
No, it seems like it's coming along very well. I did have a chance to look at it.
So next, Darius.
Yeah, so this past week I wasn't really sure where to take my research, like direction wise. So I just went to like what I was curious about. I was looking at fiber optic cables in not necessarily in Central Asia, but just generally like what are they in the first place? My understanding is they used to use copper to do wiring, but the copper can only transmit signals around like 300 feet at a time, and then you need to make a new connection, I guess. I'm not sure, but what fiber optic is it's basically like really thin spindles of glass, and the way that data is able to go through them so fast is that when you have all these little fibers, apparently like it's transmitted via light signals. That's how the data gets transmitted, and they're able to like refract within the larger like unit of the cable, like it's a big housing. And then I found out the reason they need to be underground is just to keep them safe, which I thought was super interesting. That still doesn't make that much sense to me, because, you know, why don't you just build a little fiber optic cubby hole or something like that? But I don't know. But then the most interesting thing I found was that I didn't actually know this, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the top 10 fiber optic cable manufacturers, like by market share, are all Chinese companies. And like the biggest one, YOFC, which is Yangtze Optical Fiber and Cable Co., is a state-owned enterprise. I'm assuming that the other ones definitely have a big state-owned aspect. I don't really think that China's private sector can be considered like a true private sector. And then also I did a little bit about 5G, just like considering how 5G and fiber optic cables are connected with each other. And basically my point was that China has like a huge share of the development and manufacturing of both. technologies, and both of them go hand in hand in sort of making a digital corridor like that. But yeah, and then just like the only like finding that I found that might relate to my project is since Central Asia's terrain is so mountainous and varied, will it be easy to sort of draw straight lines through Central Asia fiber optic cabling, because it's extremely expensive to install because of all the digging. So yeah, I don't know. I think I was getting somewhere, but I'm not really sure like if this is like the right depth or like the right area of expertise, or if I should consult somebody else. But yeah. Pretty interesting.
I think it's good that you're trying to define digital corridor, what it is. I think you should look at other technologies as well. And I think I left you a note today mentioning some of the technologies, and we got to see what makes a corridor digital. I think what they need to do. Maura?
Yeah, Darius, you need to throw some of that over the transom to Leo and Echo for them to look at. But the big thing that, and I'm sorry, I thought I got back to you, but maybe I didn't. The big thing that I would like you to do is what is the discussions we've had with you and Paul and I and Pari. Make a list of all the things that you want to map as parts of, as the physical and software and intellectual and business parts of what makes up a digital corridor, and then to start finding resources to continue with what you did 2 weeks ago, finding resources so that we can begin to both list, define, and map all those things. Because my job this week is to get the job description written up so we can search for someone to map, and the person who's going to map is going to need your help finding the data to map. So I will get back with you this week, and you've done a huge amount of work. I think we need another sort of list making definition session, because you're so curious and going in so many different directions. We've got so much data to sift through, Darius. Let's see what we can do together. So I'll send you an email later, and we'll make a meeting outside of this to talk more details. But you've got a huge amount of data going together.
Greg?
Likewise, I enjoyed the piece you did, Darius, and learned from it. There's an awful lot of data there. I think exactly what Mara's line of march is exactly right. Sitting down and figuring out what it is, what are the components, and what do you have and what do you not have. That sounds perfect.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing at this point, is that I'm not really sure, like, on the technical aspect. I'm trying to get a better understanding of like what exactly I want a digital corridor to mean, and I think it really revolves around the fiber optic cables. Essential to connect.
That's the most important thing. Yeah. Paul, any comment there?
No, I think the comment about defining what a digital corridor actually is, like trying to get a focus on that, I think is really important. As far as fiber optic goes, once again, as I think Darius, you're saying, is a deployment issue. For the expense of the cable itself, the real expense is in the deployment. And once again, the terrain in that area of the world is not so easy. So, also maybe the question would be the business aspect, which is the commercial aspect, which is, does it pay, to put in fiber optic cable? Is there enough business going on that's going to make the cable pay for itself? Which to me is not so clear. I mean, I think my own sense is that probably a combination of microwave, satellite, and maybe some wireless, like cell, would probably be the most likely combination of things. But I could be wrong. But that's my sense given the commercial conditions and the terrain there. But anyway, I think the comment about defining what actually a digital corridor is a good thing to focus on. That's quite useful.
Thank you. Ed, please feel free to pitch in whenever you have a comment. Anything you want to mention? Ed? Okay. No, okay. Just feel free whenever you want to mention anything.
Pari, I'd like to jump in for just a second.
Sure, please do.
And Leo, when you talk to Echo, do have her write up the Chile case that she's working at for Darius, because that's the discussants of the webinar that I went to said Chile made the decision not to go to 5G because of just the issues that Paul was talking about. And there were discussions between the US, the United States, Chile, and Japan, and they were going to build a cable. And they actually made a decision based on an interesting series of factors that might provide input for you, Dariush. So, Leo, if you will remind Echo to write up what she and I talked about, then it's clear you guys need to be reading across what the others are doing, because we're clearly now getting into the Central Asia case, which is one example of a developing country, and then Chile, which is much more developed, which is making some decisions. And then, of course, as you guys look at 5G, the European and the US cases. So we're building a database here on this. So that's great.
Just maybe another comment on the fiber optic cable, Dariush. I don't know if you looked, but actually the submarine cables that go under the oceans that connect continents, those are also fiber optic. But actually, the funding for those and the business model for those is usually through consortia. So it's not like there's one specific company or one specific country that's caught, that has the burden of the cost for those. It's a consortium, but in a country itself, then it's a different story, and then that can get quite expensive for a service provider to try to handle. So maybe that's an interesting thing to look at, is just how these submarine cables are actually funded and what the model is there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Sam here.
No, Sam is not able to make it today.
Okay. All right. So maybe next James could talk about his work. James?
Sure. So this week, I just did a brief report on the SEC guidelines, the new ones that they've released, and the old filings for the ICO, which is essentially saying that it's not, it's not law, but it's what the chairman of the SEC has just stated. And it's kind of, as long as cryptocurrency companies are trying to follow some form of adherence to validating information, validating transactions, as long as they're trying to do some compliance towards those areas that the SEC defines, and that the SEC within their own definition sees fit, kind of judge and jury, they will not be going after. But it's very arbitrary, and it's completely up to the SEC to decide with their branch of FinCEN what is fitting and what is not fitting. So that would be a very good area to consider doing a policy proposal on creating actual legal guidelines for the industry versus a chairman of one government organization just releasing a statement. So I put that in there rather briefly. I would like to schedule some time this week or not next with Mara to go over my entire proposal and get some greater organization and see where we're going to be moving forward on that. As I'm hearing, I had 4 points on the existing paper proposal: safe storage of wealth, safe transport of wealth, facilitate trade, and real-time inflation. I believe, after looking at Dariush's report on Iran, and I'm going to compile that in a little report with the data I've already written, like the data analysis between Iran and Venezuela, I think I could reasonably claim safe storage of wealth. I think there would be more specific research needed, but as far as what we have now, I think we could also claim a safe transportation of wealth within the paper. And the next one is facilitating trade. Decentralized finance platforms like BlockFi now enable loans, banking services like savings account and credit card accounts through Bitcoin. So being able to facilitate trade, I think and that's something I'll also work on writing that up. Facilitating trade is another marker that I think we should be able to check off the list. And then real-time inflation index, I do have one very interesting research paper already done on it. However, that fourth line item isn't necessary for the report to go and seek funding. It's an additional one that was just a very interesting thought. However, if need be, we can cut that off, or I could do more research on that. And that's just something I'd like to discuss with Mara. However, as of now, I think we've hit 2 of the necessary 3 check marks. And with the advent of decentralized finance to the space, we should be able to very confidently say that cryptocurrencies can facilitate trade.
Mhm.
These are the pros. Did you look at cons at all?
Cons? Yes.
Yeah, what are the problems?
I haven't specifically looking at cons because there are a great many. I will say one of the big ones is the regulatory practices. And simply because there is no law or legal clarity on a lot of these, it's forced a lot of industries not to become involved or to be very skeptical of it. But I could do more opposition research against these ideas. I just want to make sure that I want to research these ideas to make sure that they could stand and then research against them as well.
Thank you. Greg?
Well, that sounds just right. I enjoyed the piece on the SEC, but it sounds like having a session with Mauro and trying to put it all together is just right. And I think Patty's right too, that we need to be look at the downsides as well, just so everybody's aware that we're aware of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to see you add to this, and I think it will be very easy to write, and we'll pick it up later. But I would, on the con side, obviously the regulatory practices we've described as a big hole. Obviously, we also, I think, want to go to the issue of security and the problems of security in the cryptocurrency market. And then I think the other thing that you need to also include is the discussion, at least, on the electrical requirements, the support that it takes, because people are beginning to look at the sustainability issue as well. And then I don't know if you want to add anything else on the just sort of the instability of the market, because I think that's the whole driving piece of your paper, which is there is this instability, yet people are factually using it. And so the questions that you're asking is, does it make sense for people to be using it? And how can we make it safer for people to use? How can we make it more legitimate? Can we make it more legitimate? So I think we have to include a side on criminal history, the instability, and the problems of sustainability. Even though it's still only 2% of electricity, that's a lot to do to create money. A lot of electricity to create value. So we will talk, James.
The industry is already updating. They're starting to update based on the energy side to a proof of stake, but I could include that in there and let people know that there is a change.
We'll meet. Obviously, everybody will be getting an email before I move on to lunch to set up meetings for next week. So this will be great.
Perfect.
So next, Megan, maybe Megan could talk about her project.
So yeah, I'm still helping out Combate, and really looking at this week was internet shutdowns and trying to figure out the main triggers for them. So what I did was scour the internet and trying to find the most reported internet shutdowns and create a timeline based on them. The date, the country, and then the kind of main event that was going on around the same time as the internet shutdowns. And what I found was that it really is elections and protests, and kind of this idea that whenever the government doesn't have control of the state, they shut down the internet to stop information access, stop people from gathering, essentially just trying to take control back. And yeah, as Greg said, I saw your comment, and it is pretty obvious. Yeah, it is obvious that whenever an authoritarian government doesn't have control, they're going to try to take control back, essentially. So I think what I'd want to do maybe is I need to talk to Combate. I haven't spoken to him yet, so I really need to set up a meeting with him. And also for next week, I probably will have a look more in detail about, what was it? About monopoly on ISPs and how that has an effect, and the type of authoritarian governments that try to impose this, and possibly also the penetration of internet, because that seems to come up a lot in literature. Those three those three topics. So I think that's what I will focus on for next week. But yeah, elections and protests is definitely the main triggers for internet shutdowns in the SSA. Yeah.
Megan, hold on a second. Would everyone who's not speaking please mute, because we lost some of your conversation, Megan, because there was feedback from somebody else. So just if you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute.
Yeah, much better now.
Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat any of it?
No, it's fine.
No? Cool.
Greg, any comments?
I made some comments on the, as Megan said, I made some comments on the piece. It does seem fairly straightforward. So and interesting though, just to see it spelled out. So I was really asking, is there more to be said? And I think that's kind of your next set of issues, right, Megan?
Yeah, just like I said, in literature, they also talk about the monopoly on ISPs. So especially in countries like Ethiopia, who owns all the internet, essentially. There are no private companies in Ethiopia, I'm pretty sure. Looking at penetration of internet, because it also seems that countries with a lower penetration tend to have more shutdowns, which is interesting. And looking at type of government, so authoritarian, whether it's military or whether it's been inherited. So yeah, those kind of aspects.
And do you imagine that one of the reasons that Ethiopia has had so many more shutdowns is precisely because it has absolute control of the ISP?
It has absolute control of ISP. So whenever they want to do a shutdown, they can. They just switch it off. Just because they have absolute control. So,
Maura?
I think this is great, Megan. I think what you're doing is really establishing a data point that you will be able to use across all countries, because we will be able to say there is a definite correlation in the democratization electoral process and the internet. And I think you'll be able to give us the nuance across the countries that you've already researched that go from 1% of penetration into the market to the 50+%. So no, Megan, I'm really pleased with how you're doing it. Yes, please reach out to Combate. I'm not having a lot of success getting back with him. So something may be going on with his dissertation that's distracting.
Yeah, nor am I. I think I sent him a message, but he never replied to it. So I need to send him another one. Yeah.
Well, and who knows, maybe Wuhan is more shut down again than we know. But yes, I'm not having any trouble getting a hold of him. So we'll both try.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next, Joy. Is Joy here?
Joy's not here.
She's not, okay. All right, then we go to Elmira. Elmira, would you like to talk about your work?
Yeah.
Did you had a chance to do any more work since last week? Because I know there was a bit of confusion here.
Yeah, I have done something about the data and the part that I was focused in the last report, but I did not upload it and I did not continue because I was not sure if it's a correct process. What I have done was a little bit studying around the idea about the information and smart buildings, that how the IT team and the information connecting can help the smart building to be more efficient in some process. And the thing was that in this place there was the gap between IT team and the smart buildings that can be covered by finding the best solution to have this gap by finding the best solution that can be more efficient in smart building, have more data, and how to connect this data, and then give this data to the IT team to analyze it and send it again to a smart building to see if it helps in technology. that is what I
Okay.
have done, but I didn't
Mhm.
continue to find the other points.
Mhm. And I think it would be good now, you're doing a comparison between green building and smart building.
Yeah.
So at
yeah.
the same time, it will be good to connect the concept of a smart building to a smart city. So look at the technology of Internet of Things and see
Okay.
how they work both in the building and in the city.
Okay, so I will continue with connecting the smart
Thank you.
building with the smart city.
Yeah, but I think Maura is going to have an appointment with you, so you will follow her guideline. Maura?
Yeah, would be perfect.
Absolutely. And if you guys can't hear this, I mean, obviously we're having a convergence in the sense because the minute we get to smart cities and the Internet of Things, we're talking 5G. And
Yes.
we're also talking the connection between smart buildings, OT, operational technology, and IT, the networks that allow the information networks, which of course, Dan and Kai comes back to you, and industrial control systems. Smart cities are essentially factories on steroids when it comes to the idea of industrial control. So you all should be, I keep encouraging you, and this is why I keep encouraging everyone to label what's inside their research. You should be reading what other people are researching, because we are beginning to get a bulk of convergence here that you will help each other and you'll get leads from each other. And I trust you are talking to each other. So.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Any comments, Greg?
No, I need to catch up with this one.
Okay. Next, Daniel is not here, is he?
No.
Daniel, no. Okay, then Doina maybe wants to talk about her work. Doina?
Yes, sure. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this week I've been consulting the Cyborg Manifesto of Dana Haraway. She turns against somehow the scientific rationality and mechanism of capitalism by using irony. She also turns against the austere structuralism and holistic thinking and blends somehow the fiction with academic writing. She condemns the building of identities based on affinities and opts for pluralism, polyphony, for the partial, for the contradictory, and permanently unclosed constructions of personal and collective selves. Cyborg, in her manifesto, represents an unfinished project. It's an entity without a fixed identity, as she names it. It is found somehow in a continuous transformation. And her story is less about technoscience, and it's more about biosociality. The term of biopolitics, as we know, is an elusive one and was partially developed by Michel Foucault, along with the concept of governmentality and the analysis of micropowers. And her approach to communication on the other side is based on the concept of simulacra. Microelectronics, she says, is the technical basis of simulacra, that is, of copies without original. And Jean Baudrillard's interpretation of the concept of simulacra translates into the process of creating copies that depict things that either had no original or that no longer have an original. According to Marshall McLuhan, on the other hand, the human and social experience is influenced firstly by the environment and then by the content. And he gives an important dimension to the formats and technical properties through which messages are conveyed. And similarly, somehow, the Cyborg Manifesto of Dana Haraway says that technology is not neutral and we are inside of that. We make, and inside us. We are living, she says, in a world of connections, and it matters which ones get made and which get unmade. This is pretty much.
Yeah, Doina, I'm concerned that what concepts out of this you're selecting for your manifesto study? Out of this whole study you did last week, which concepts are going to come out as concrete to be studied for your manifesto?
Well, I think that this is going to come a little bit later when I have all the manifestos. As I told, the concept of biopolitics is something that interests me. I have previously worked somehow on Jean Baudrillard's work. But for the next week, for example, I intend somehow to research a bit more on present and actual manifestos, which are a little bit more concrete. And I'm not going to speak only about a singular somehow manifesto, but I intend to make a group and speak somehow a little bit more general about them.
Okay, sounds good. Maura?
I have to read it, Doina, because I have to learn through reading it. But I do. You talked about the Robert David Steele last week, and I did not see that. Did you upload it? And I just
no. It was the manifesto of Robert David Steele. It's something that I did additional somehow last week. And I will upload it today.
Okay, great, because I read the Ursula Le Guin and commented on it, and then I was looking for the David Steele, and then this, again, I have to read it and get back to you because I'm still learning, and so I have to follow along and do a little research once you've written. I go back and do some reading, and then I can give you comments. So I can't comment until I've actually read it all, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Greg?
I need to go back and read it as well, so I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Just really quickly, Pai, if we could just go back to smart cities for a second.
Yeah.
I've encountered that as well in looking through like the corridor project, and I know that IBM has been like developing smart cities along the Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor Development Corporation. Like they teamed up to develop 6 smart cities across the width of India. And then also Huawei has been helping Kazakhstan turn a lot of its major cities into smart cities as well. Those are just 2 things I wanted to mention, just in case it's helpful to you, Almira.
Thank you. Elmira, would be good to take a note of those just for future to see how we are going to go about. Also, your work is not particularly about that, but it's good to have all the understanding of a smart city in one place.
Yeah,
Thanks,
sure.
Darius.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darius. Carmen? Is Carmen here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, Carmen.
So
how are you, Carmen?
Yes, how are you?
I'm better, thank you.
Good.
Further instructions really for the algorithmic culture proposal. I know that we want to make it more specific. So just a little summary, it's about how algorithmic prejudices sort of affect art and culture, and specifically minority cultures. And I know I saw your comment, Pari, that you want to make it more specific, maybe focusing on either writers or filmmakers. So once we decide that, I think it'll be much easier to edit the proposal and make it fit the requirements of the Mellon Foundation.
Yes, thank you. And we're going to have a conversation after meeting today. So next, I think, Paul, any comment? Jennifer, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Jennifer. Jennifer, first of all, thank you for all the hard work you did. You have been working very hard and producing a lot. Thank you. So would you like to talk about your projects lastly?
Yeah, so this week I kind of took a pause because we had decided to put solar winds off for a bit and the NATO proposal was in. So outside of the work I did for you looking into global governance and the way the private sector is playing into it, that's kind of what I did this week. I just wasn't really sure what else to look into. So I'd love some direction for next week. And also, how was your speech on Friday?
It was very good. Thank you very much. And yeah, that was useful, the work you did. Thank you. And we also submitted the proposal, which a copy of that will be placed in the folder. Still, we haven't done because I'm busy with another deadline today and another one in March 4. So, but soon everything will be in place.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay. So
thank
then
you.
next week, what should I do?
I think Maura would discuss that.
Okay.
Maura, any comments?
I have not got anything right in mind for you just yet, Jennifer, but I do want to just say thank you so much for all the NATO disinformation background and some really concrete disinformation stuff. I think, again, we can talk offline. I think I'd like to see you continue to do a little bit more on disinformation. And I also think for solar winds, even though we're on a pause on it, there was a very important congressional testimony last Tuesday. So if you have not reviewed that yet, that would probably be helpful to write it up. Greg, do you concur?
Yes, absolutely. No, that'd be great. No, and again, thanks for all the good work on both solar winds and the NATO disinformation stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
So next, Eduardo, would you like to discuss anything special? I know that one issue was publishing a book.
Yes, I'm still, I think, in a preparation phase for writing the book. Although I seem to more than I can edit. So at the moment, I would say it's still a creative storm in which you're putting together all these ideas. But I do find Dania's project on Festos to be very interesting, and also Carmen's idea of algorithmic cultures. Just a quick recap, I'm working on a book on how algorithmic technologies impact policymaking and government decision-making. So the idea that in the future, and even to some degree today, governments outsource a lot of their decision-making and policymaking to algorithms. I think that has some impacts on the concept, especially of individual sovereignty, which is a foundation in liberal democracy. So I'm interested in learning from hopefully maybe Dania and Carmen on their work, because I think that especially the philosophical aspects that Dania was talking about, which takes me right back to grad school, and I miss those conversations on Baudelaire and Lacan and McLuhan and all that. But I'd really like to make sure that that I can ground this work into that philosophical framework, so that it doesn't become too much just a matter of describing the technologies.
That's very good. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, Paul, is there anything you want to discuss?
Maybe just two quick comments. So one, for what Dorna's working on, I don't know if this fits or not, but or if you've looked at this, but Bill Joy is a reference that comes to mind as someone who's looked at some of the issues that you were talking about, a little bit dated, but maybe still relevant. And then on the project with the elections and government's position on the internet in some of the countries like Ethiopia was discussed. Just as a refinement, there's a lot of work that's been done by Zeynep Tufekci, who's Turkish, but she sort of looked into those very issues. And her conclusion, in fact, was that in quite a number of cases, governments realized that they couldn't shut down the internet, or if they shut down the internet, it didn't keep information from getting to exile communities. So a lot of these countries that you're looking at have significant exile communities outside of the country, and they were very good at, they had access to no problem with access to the internet. So it turned out that wasn't a very effective way of trying to stop people communicating within whatever country it was that was going through a bit of turmoil. And so her point was that a lot of these governments have now turned to using what I would call denial of service attacks. So basically, through a variety of means, spreading so much misinformation or information, depending on who you are, that it effectively shuts down the information coming from the people who are trying to protest the government or trying to stage a revolution. And China especially is sort of a model in that case. A lot of countries have looked at China as the best way to manage those kinds of campaigns that are against people who are trying to overthrow the government or attack the government or contradict the government in some way. So anyway, I just mentioned that as a reference, but it's quite an interesting discussion.
Yep. Okay, next, is there any comments?
I just sent Paul a note to say, would you please put her name in the chat? Because I got Zainab and not the rest. So
it's not the most
I was
obvious.
just
I'll
about
do
to
that.
say that as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll do that.
If you would do that.
Okay, I think we have Muhammad here. Is he?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Muhammad.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
So, Muhammad, I think I sent you an email today. Is there anything you want to discuss? Do you think you can do the newsletter for us while we're working on e-library? Or do you think what I sent to you on e-library is doable and you can go forward?
Sure. Yeah, I received your email today. I need to, get some more information about the newsletter because I'm quite sure I'm quite clear with what I want to do for e-library, but I don't know much about that newsletter. What you want to, yeah.
So why don't you finish the e-library? I think based on what I send you, it's clear what I'm asking, right?
Yes,
okay.
That's true. Yeah.
All right. So
yeah, I will work on the e-library. As I told you, it's almost ready, the both front end and back end. Just the one thing is more challenging and is more tricky is to create the links. I'm trying to find a more convenient and a more user-friendly way to do the search links for different items to find an article.
All right. Thank you very much. That's very good. Thanks. Thanks. Any comment from anybody? Anyone I have missed?
Maybe just one advance warning or opportunity. As I think many of you know, both Mara and I are closely involved with another USC initiative. This is a Director of National Intelligence sponsored Center of Academic Excellence, which is turned into a quite interesting endeavor. We're having a major symposium in April. I think it's the 8th or 9th. Robert, do you remember the date?
8th and 9th.
8th and 9th.
It'll be, I think, a half day or a couple of hours each day because it'll be virtual.
Right. It'll be virtual. But I have, in the interest of building better relations, closer relations with USC, I was asked, and we have said we will take an hour. So what I'd imagine is maybe 4 of you might present your work in 10 minutes and take some questions or something like that. In any case, I'm wide open about format, but we have an hour and to showcase basically the work of the forum. I suppose particularly is it those pieces of it that relate more closely to intelligence, but a lot of the work we're doing does in the cyber disinformation area. All those are things that have intelligence implications. So be thinking about whether you'd like to present and what and we'll look forward to having a good hour.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Also, I would like to remind folks, if anyone who isn't a USC student plans to work through the summer, you need to let me know if because I know some of you are going to be graduating, et cetera, but if you have plans and you want to work through the summer, there are grants that you as a student can apply for if we can define a project for you. So those few of you who are USC students still or who will be after May, and I think Dan, you're graduating. I don't, Dariush, I'm not sure about you or Kai or Jennifer or Carmen, but if you're not graduating and you are not doing some other internship this summer and you want to continue with us, send me an email and Greg and I will start looking and working and telling you what you need to do, because there is an application deadline. Just like everything else, one of the things that, Pari can tell you, there's a deadline for money and we have to apply, we have to have thought about it. So all of you, any of you who are thinking about that, please start thinking now and reach out to me. And then what I'd just like to do right now, as Pari finishes, those who want meetings with me, if we could take 2 minutes before you hang up, I'll get everybody on my schedule and then, but we can stop recording before then.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to discuss? No? Okay.
I just need to ask a question about the smart city and smart building that Dariush has some comments. Is it possible we connect with Dariush to have the reports? to see if it's something that is useful for me, maybe in the future.
I will make sure you are connected, yes.
Yeah, you
Okay,
are
thank
actually
you.
connected on a Slack. You can communicate through Slack. Both of you are on
Okay.
Slack. Yeah.
Okay,
So you
thank
can
you.
communicate to anyone you want through Slack, Elmira.
Okay, okay. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Okay, then thank you, everybody.
Have a
And
good week.
with that, yes, have a wonderful week and see you next week. And we communicate during the week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, Greg, you're going to stop recording?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm going to have a meeting with Carmen, but we wait, Maura, for you to sort